Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Forget frequently asked questions,
common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. My guest today is Thomas B. Cristiano. He's an attorney with Blankingship Christiano. We're going to talk about identity theft and how you can hopefully protect yourself from it, the different kinds of identity theft, etc. So welcome. Thanks for coming, Thomas. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I guess first of all, maybe it's laughable, but how big is the problem of identity theft? Is it just everywhere, or is it, what does it look like for most people?
Well, for most people, identity theft is a pervasive crime in this country at this point. We all know the steps we have to take in safeguarding our financial information and our personal identifying information. I believe the FBI, the last time I saw the statistic, it was the fastest growing crime in the country. And I don't think anything's stopped with that, with the threat of cyber threats and your identifying information everywhere and the means you need to take to detect and defer and defend yourself from identity theft.
Yeah, well, what are the predominant kinds? Is it someone will just get your credit card info and use it? Or is it they'll, somehow get a copy of a driver's license or social security card? What are the levels and what are the types that people encounter?
Sure. There's all kinds of different types of identity theft. It is a broad topic, as you're pointing out. Typically, when an average consumer has an identity theft situation, they mix that with their credit card account has been compromised in some way, and there's been unauthorized charges on their credit card account. What our firm helps people out with is a different set of identity theft where it's a little more serious, and the identity theft perpetrator has obtained your identifying information and opened up accounts and made up charges, let them run it off, and it's been placed on your credit report when it shouldn't be on your credit report. We help people that are the victims of identity theft get items removed from their credit report and compensated for the damages that it cost them.
What's the average time after a breach that people become aware of it? I would guess if they have a monthly credit monitoring service, then right away, but the average person probably doesn't have that. So what's the lag between someone getting their stuff and them realizing?
That's a good question. Typically, the average person doesn't have identity theft protection in the sense of paying for it. And we don't even actually recommend that people do pay for that. There are mechanisms through the Federal Trade Commission where you can get a free copy of your credit report through annualcreditreport.com. And typically we recommend you check that every 3 months or so. So if you get one free copy from each of the credit bureaus. So you can pick it on X month. I like to say on your birthday, and then follow up 3 to 4 months later. And when you look at your credit report, what you basically want to do is look at addresses that you don't recognize, inquiries that you don't recognize. That'll detect more recent activities related to identity theft, because the way the identity thief will have to work is that they're not going to put your home address when they're opening up a credit card in your name. What they'll do is they'll put a fraudulent address. They'll use your good birth date or social security number to establish the credit, and then they'll apply for credit with a credit card company. So if you in fact look at your addresses and look at your inquiries, what you're going to notice right out of the box, and you'll be able to deter after you notice this, is you can see that that's an address I don't live at. I didn't apply for credit with that bank. I have a problem. I need to follow up. And typically the accounts take a little bit of time to open. So you can monitor and defend that way. And you should be able to figure it out within a month or or so, I would think.
Are people treated differently if the problem is discovered after a few weeks or a month versus like 2-3 months or 6 months?
I would think they definitely treat it differently in the sense that the longer it goes where you know about it and you don't take action, you are going to have a harder time to stop the problem and to prove your innocence. Because that's really the thing about under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you can send in police reports and identity theft affidavits to show that you claim you didn't open these accounts. But in many ways, the process is set up to the victim has to prove they didn't do it more than the other side has to prove that you do owe the money. That's one of what I would consider one of the flaws of the system. So when you get involved with identity theft, typically the first action after you detect it is you're going to want to file a FTC affidavit, notify the police, notify the creditor that inquired to try to stop the credit line so more money isn't charged up in your name. And then the other mechanism you can do right off the bat as soon as you detect it is file a initial fraud alert. It's supposed to operate where if you notify one of the credit bureaus, they will place an initial fraud alert on your credit file, and that'll be there for 90 days to kind of give like a pause so the thief can't open up any more credit. And then later on, after you file the police report and you take the other steps that you recommend, you can actually ask for an extended fraud alert. And I believe the extended fraud alert lasts for 7 years. So that's one way you can spring into action as soon as you have any notice that there is a problem with identity theft.
You mentioned the FTC. Like, why would you notify them, and what other parties, and why do you notify?
Well, you notify them because that's the way it's set up, I guess, is a flippant answer to the question. The way the credit reporting agencies operate is they want some sort of objective, verifiable mechanism that you filed with an entity to prove that you didn't open these accounts. So the FTC has an identity theft affidavit that they set up and run through their website, and you go in and you fill out your name and identifying information and the accounts. It can be a little problematic for an average consumer to fill this out, but it's a necessary step to be able to ultimately recover your credit file. They want the information to be filed that way to stop people from fraudulently saying they are a victim of identity theft. So the FTC is one mechanism. The other mechanism would be your local police department. You can file at least we're based in Virginia, so many of the local police department, they have online mechanisms to file police reports to identify the account that you believe is the victim of identity theft and any perpetrator you think may have done it. And then you can go from that point, you have the documentation that you need in order to dispute the information with your credit files. So when you dispute the information with your credit files, you're going to want to send to Equifax, Experian, TransUnion a descriptive letter of that you were a victim of identity theft. You didn't open the account with whatever credit card it was, and a copy of this FTC affidavit and this police report in order to get them to try to take any action. They don't like doing anything unless they're provided with this information, at which point they will have a statutory duty to investigate the identity theft and notify the person that is furnishing the information related to the identity theft account. So we help people under the Federal Fair Credit Reporting Act because the Fair Credit Reporting Act sets dual standards where the credit reporting agency will notify the furnisher of the dispute, and then the furnisher has a duty to investigate, and the credit reporting agency has a duty to investigate. And if either one of them can't verify the information, they're supposed to remove it from your credit file.
Yeah, like in what time period are they supposed to remove it once you notify?
Well, if you try to invoke the blocking statute, so there's two different statutes under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. There's a blocking statute that the credit reporting agency, if it receives a valid identity theft report, now the dirty secret of the credit reporting agencies is they look and nitpick police reports so they don't have to invoke the blocking statute because it's kind of powerful. They're supposed to block the reporting of identity theft related accounts. I believe it's in 4 days from receipt of the letters. That's why they don't really want to acknowledge it. And they would rather say, oh, the identity theft report isn't valid. And they'll look for one of the statutory reasons or try to fit it in so they don't have to block it in 4 days. At that point, if they don't block it in 4 days, we work in under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, traditional reinvestigation provision at 1681 IA. And then this provision, the credit reporting agency has 5 days from the receipt of the dispute to notify the furnisher of the information. And that's 5 business days. After the furnisher of the information receives notice of the ACDB from the credit reporting agency, typically it's about 30 days later, they have to respond or the information will be deleted from the file. I say typically because depending on how information is provided, there can be some extensions. It's a complex federal statute. So, but rule of thumb is 30 days. You should get an answer to your dispute when you dispute it with a credit reporting agency.
So what makes a person require your services? Like, what are the complications that make it necessary?
Sure. Well, we help people who have tried to dispute, or basically it's an overwhelming process. The story I like to tell is we represented a woman who went into the hospital to have a baby, and an identity thief got her identifying information. And what was supposed to be a joyous occasion of having a baby, the identity thief opened up credit in her name, ran it up. And while she was trying to be a new mother, she had to deal with writing dispute letters and notifying the authorities of the problem. And so when Hugo and I got involved with helping her out, she had done disputes to the credit reporting agencies, and they hadn't removed the identity theft related items. So what we do is we use the federal statute, and we help people once the dispute process is not worked for them. So the dispute process is not particularly fair to the consumer, in my opinion, because it's tailored to keep the item on the information. You got to remember, with identity theft, we're talking about who bears the loss here. So the money's been achieved by somebody. The identity thief has spent the money. The bank doesn't want to bear the loss, so they don't really want to take it off your credit report, because they know if they can hold your credit report hostage, they can maybe ultimately get paid, or people will get so frustrated they'll just pay for the debt. And so on the front end, we try to help people out and say, no, there's a way out. We can help you. And, we help people. And when they come in our office, you can see the tension in their face. Their financial life is, you have security clearances and trying to refinance a mortgage and buying a car and whatever little, credit impacts every part of our lives. So when you have a $4,000 credit card that you didn't open and it's on your credit file, that's distressing, and you need help. And if the system isn't going to help people, that's where Hugo and I step in, and we help people. We help them get it off their credit report, and we help to hold the people accountable who aren't going to invest the resources necessary in order to properly investigate the disputes and properly keep people's good names clear.
What's the most, memorable or convoluted, identity theft case that you worked on? Any comes to mind?
Yeah, I'll piggyback I'll tell the rest of the story. So here's the rest of the story of the lady who went to have the baby. Not only when she was in the dispute process of disputing the identity theft accounts, and this is a publicly recorded case, it's Sloan v. Equifax. It went all the way to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals on certain issues. So what Equifax absolutely did wrong is not only did they leave the identity theft accounts on her credit report, but they ended up swapping the identity thief's credit with the victim's credit. So not only did she have an identity theft situation, but obviously a person conducting identity theft doesn't have the best credit to begin with. That's why they're stealing identities. So our client ended up with the thief's credit file. And I think that's the craziest fact pattern I've seen, where not only do you not have your good name, but you've been given the thief's name. So it's outrageous. There really should be more resources invested by the credit reporting agencies. They don't invest resources because it's their cost center, right? If you know how a credit reporting agency works, they take the data from the furnishers, the banks, all the big banks, debt collectors, and they compile it on the credit report. And so they get their data for free. They're supposed to keep control and make sure the data is accurate. And then they sell it when you go to get a mortgage. They sell the data in a package form with a credit score. So it's simply the Fair Credit Reporting Act requires them to do it with maximum possible accuracy. If you're going to engage in a highly regulated industry, you think they would invest the resources into doing that, but they don't want to invest resources because it's a cost center. They like to engage in outsourcing, and there's just a lot of ways the system is not set up for consumers to get identity theft accounts removed from their credit report. And that's where Hugo and I really like to step in. And, we're fairly specialized, and we've been doing this for over 20 years. We know the credit reporting agencies' processes. We have access to information through litigation. So we know how it's supposed to work and where the pitfalls are for consumers. And we try to zone in so we can really help the person out. It's a very fulfilling job to see somebody at the end of the day, because you remember how stressed and upset they were when they're sitting in our office. And then I feel like when I talk to someone on the phone that's an identity theft victim, you can hear it in their voice. There's a tension, there's a tightness to their vocal cords, because credit is so important. And I've paid every payment I've ever owed my whole life, and I have a 790 credit score, and one person took it away from me in a minute, and they won't fix it, and they're screaming almost almost out loud that this is not who I am. I pay people. I don't have a $4,000 credit card that I didn't pay for somebody that's now a debt collection. So you'd asked me earlier how long it takes. In bad cases where they don't notice right away, it can get to a debt collector, and that's where the problem spreads almost like a virus, where you have a debt collector collecting on a charge account that you didn't open, and then you got to make sure you catch out all the little things that may have been transferred to. So it can be a mess. And what people need to know, and what we like to tell people, is there's hope. There's people that are specialized to help you. If you contact us, we can talk to you about your situation and try to get you on the path towards recovering your good name.
I've heard, I don't know, in the past, someone may die in childbirth or die very young, and someone will take over their credit file for their whole life. Does that happen anymore? Are there cases that have been going on somehow for years? Someone is thought dead by the credit bureaus and they're not dead, and they can't convince them. I don't know if this is all urban myths, but have we seen those situations?
I've not personally had a case where someone was deceased and marked deceased on their credit file, but it happens. It's not an urban myth. I know that other lawyers had represented people in that circumstances, and my understanding of the facts of that case, they'll send a picture with their dispute letter to the credit reporting agencies. Here I am. Here's a newspaper. I'm very much alive, and they still don't get it accurate. And it goes back to all the problem I was speaking of earlier. It's just a resource issue. When you outsource and you maybe spend 12 cents to reinvestigate a dispute, you're not going to get a detailed investigation. They basically have it all automated and outsourced now, and they scan things in and they electronically send it, and people look at the computer and go, yeah, that's right, you open the account, or that's right, you're dead, and they just leave it right on your credit file. And that's not right. That's not what the Credit Reporting Act is supposed to do. You're supposed to conduct a detailed, systematic investigation to ensure maximum possible accuracy. And it's just not happening.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. So what's there's these services like LifeLock, or you can, I guess, call the bureaus and put like a fraud alert on your credit. What are your recommendations for people who prevent this from happening in the first place?
Prevent from happening, I think, is mostly just being vigilant. Keep an eye on your information on the front end. Don't give it out. If you're going to go to a doctor's office and they're asking for your social security number, do they really need that? They don't need that. They have your health insurance information. Don't give people the opportunity to steal it on the front end. That's the best remedy, is a good defense, I think, in that regard. As I said earlier, I don't know that you need to pay for LifeLock, and I'm not here to criticize their product, but the mechanism of using the annual creditreport.com and just looking at your credit files and then seeing the inquiries and the address, that's very effective. Open your mail, check your mail. If you start getting notices, because the people that are owed money, they use skip tracing to find you. So if you are opening your mail and go, why did I suddenly get this bill from Chase? What's this all about? Because they'll look to find you to make you pay at some point. So the thieves, what we've seen is they get the account open, they'll run it up as much as they can to the credit limit, and then they're gone. They're on to the next thing. And so the bank will charge it off, and then they're ultimately going to seek to collect, and they will ultimately get to you, whether it's through a skip trace and they get your right address, or a debt collector skip traces and gets to your address. They'll get to you. So open your mail, make sure you're keeping an eye on what's been sent to you, review your checking account, bank account for fraud. Those are good initial mechanisms too. Basically, anything you can do to detect a problem. Many people think that data breaches are a source of issue. They could be. We've seen a handful of people, I would describe it. The thing about data breaches is generally the person doing the data breach, the bad actor, they want to get the company that they breach. So that's the good news for consumers. I had a friend recently, he was in a data breach, and he reached out to me and said, hey, Tom, can you help me out? What's going on? I said, I'm happy to. And so I said, well, all right, well, go get your credit files. And just like I said earlier, we went through his addresses, and there thankfully weren't any addresses he recognized, and there weren't any inquiries that he didn't recognize. And then you go through the accounts, and they were all his accounts. So, anytime you get a notice that you were involved in a breach, that's another good time to look at your credit report from annualcreditreport.com. Basically, you have to be vigilant but not worried, is how I would describe it.
Okay. And then how do you get paid? Like, what is you get like a percentage of the recovery? Like, what is the recovery, if anything?
Yeah. So what we do is we represent people on a contingency basis. So we do not recover unless there is a recovery in the case. The cases typically depend on the complexity for what the value is and what the credit reporting agency did wrong. So under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you're entitled to two levels of damage in your attorney's fees. So the first level of damages are compensatory damages. And compensatory damages can be for emotional distress that you went through, lost time working on doing the disputes, costs of mailing the letters and disputing. Those are the types of compensatory damages you can do. The Fair Credit Reporting Act also contemplates punitive damages. Punitive damages are in place for reckless violations of the act. And basically some of the urban legend stories that you spoke of earlier, those are typically cases that are viewed in the industry as potential punitive damage case where the facts are so egregious and the credit reporting is so bad that the punitive damages could be warranted. And then the third part is the attorney's fees. So there's what's called a fee shifting provision. So obviously where the American provision, most of the time people bear their own costs of attorney fees, but for certain statutory violations. And the Federal Fair Credit Reporting Act has a statutory violation provision that allows for attorney's fees. And so it allows us to attempt to recover for the client, and the client doesn't feel the urgency of, oh my God, I'm on the hook for all these legal fees, because I can tell you that credit reporting agencies and their lawyers, these are big law firms. These are big national law firms, and they are in it to win it. And they will defend the case, and they will criticize the consumer to any way they can to try to keep, to win the case for their client, which is fine. But that's what the point of the fee shifting provision is. You can have a Fair Credit Reporting Act case where there's damages that, anywhere from $125,000 to $300,000 of compensatory damages, but the legal fees could exceed $500,000. And that's the benefit of hiring a specialist, because we know where to look, we know how to litigate the case, and we know if things get aggressive or detailed, we can handle it. And so, but that's costly. And so it's nice that there's a fee shifting provision so the person can get recovered and then the attorney can get paid at the same time.
I mean, why would the credit agencies blow so much money on why do they care? Why would they just give in a lot of the time or fix it?
The company line is, well, if we take everything off that somebody disputes, then the credit report isn't really accurate, and then the whole financial system will have inaccurate information. I've never been a big fan of that argument. The other thing they claim is that there are people trying to defraud them and that they are trying to get otherwise legitimate debt off of their credit reports. So there's an agency of what's called credit repair, and credit repair are not the kind of cases that we take, but in credit repair cases, people try to game the system and ultimately redispute and over-dispute the cases in order to overwhelm the credit reporting agency to take an otherwise accurate item off of their credit report. So they would say that's why they can't set the system up differently. I don't know. I think there's a big difference between somebody who they can know has been disputing repeatedly and another person who claims they're a victim of identity theft. But escalation should have happened accordingly when they go to reinvestigate.
Yeah, these are sophisticated companies. Of course they can tell the difference.
They chose to engage in credit reporting, and there's only 3 of them. So, I mean, there's minor specialty ones, but for the most part, it's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. If you're going to get a mortgage, they're going to get what's called a tri-merge. And the reason why there's 3 major credit reporting agencies is it's a highly regulated industry. And if you're you're going to choose to do business in a highly regulated industry, you better get it right. You better get people's names accurate and their credit reporting accurate.
So do you serve people in all 50 states, or where can you help people?
Well, typically where you help people in the Northern Virginia region, Washington, D.C., because that's where our office is located. We have had I'm barred in Pennsylvania as well, so we do some cases in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia primarily. But we're happy to talk to someone. We can always associate with an attorney in another state for the right case. But what we like to do is talk to people and see where they are and see if we can help them out. And then we'll worry about the details of representation and after we talk to them.
What would people use to search you out? Like, would they say credit repair lawyer or credit defense?
Typically, people search for inaccurate credit reports, or candidly, like one of the better searches is, can I sue Equifax? Can I sue TransUnion? And then people pick it up through Google and find our website. But that's part of why we're trying to do some podcasts and get the word out that this is a big problem and we can help people out with it.
Yeah, you just take bills and search like identity theft lawyer, identity theft legal help, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Identity theft legal help. And then, contact us. It's no charge to talk to me. I love talking to people on the phone. If I'm super busy with a case, I'll say, hey, can I call you back? Is there a better time that we can talk? Because I understand that there's not a heck of a lot of people that help people out with the problems that we help people out with. So I try to give my time and attention and be generous with that. Just to, even if I can't take your case, or I don't think it's a case that we can help you with, I do try to point people in the right direction and give them some resources to help them out.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Oh, no, I appreciate it. It's a great conversation.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.